Think for yourself. Question authority.
What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. Now we have a lot of information to discuss about Nintendo Switch 2 or their next gen console, whatever they call it, that Nintendo will be releasing in the not too distant future, plus some additional information and rumor about what Nintendo's current plans are for the Switch in the fiscal year. Now if you do enjoy this discussion though, please hit the like button for me. And you guys have been really great on these videos that we've been doing, lots of viewerships and engagement, so I really appreciate all your support. And as you know, I tell it like it is on this channel, and I think you guys appreciate that. And from the interactions with you guys in my last live stream, it was fantastic. It was a really great time, and maybe we'll do another one of those in the not too distant future. But we have a lot to discuss here. First, about this information has come out, and you're gonna find it very interesting because it's actually kind of funny once you see what it really is saying, which a lot of people didn't actually even see, especially with Bloomberg, which I talked about in 2021, that I would not be covering information from them again because of the incorrect information that they reported on for quite a few years, going back to the Wall Street Journal with Mochizuki. So the reason why I'm covering them now is because the information is kind of interesting to see once you do see it. However, first of all, we're going to discuss this information that came out from Nikkei, the Japanese analyst publication website that talks about information regarding Nintendo's next gen hardware. And they've been doing this for many years now. Like way back in 2018, 2019, they've been talking about next gen hardware for Nintendo. It's kind of interesting. But when we take a look at this, new Nintendo Switch releasing in 2024, latest rumor says. A new report from Japan indicates that a successor to the Nintendo Switch could be launching in 2024, with the company in negotiations with suppliers. Now remember, this is being reported at the beginning of 2023. So if they're talking about launching a new Switch in 2024, and the rumor talks about it being the second half of 2024. Now, if they're doing that and they're just talking to suppliers right now, the reason why this is a little bit suspect in my opinion, now again, you guys can believe whatever you want to believe about these reports. It's up to you, right? I'm just going to give you my take on this, and I'm going to give you some additional information. So I don't want to say that I am discrediting them necessarily here, but I do question if Nintendo's talking to suppliers right now, how is that going to be helping them at the second half of 2024, which is over a year and a half away from now? Because parts and suppliers, their prices are changing all the time. And especially in 2024 in the second half, the prices could be dramatically different by then. They could be even cheaper, they could be more expensive, either way, or parts could be changed during that time. A year and a half is not that long of a time in our sense. I'm actually okay with a new Switch coming in 2024. And at least by that point, that would be quite long enough for the current Switch anyway. But either way, 2023 holiday, 2024 holiday, it doesn't really matter to me as long as we are getting that next gen Switch or next gen console in the not too distant future, which that would be pretty soon. I'm 100% fine with. And I said in my last live stream that Nintendo could be releasing a next gen Switch holiday 2023 or in 2024. It was talked about then in the live stream. I gave some examples as to what options they could be going through internally to decide on whether or not they want to release a next gen Switch this year or next year. Either way is fine. That's my only question though, is like if they're talking about plans with suppliers right now, normally in the beginning of the year, if you're doing that, that kind of more hints at a holiday kind of release plan from my perspective, because you're getting the gauges of pricing for this year. It's kind of more difficult once you go farther out into the future, trying to get prices and negotiating with suppliers a year and a half to 2 years in advance. The landscape could be dramatically different by that time, especially with the global pandemic that we had. You can't predict the future that far out usually with parts and suppliers. Things change dramatically. So that's my only question with this particular rumor. Also, on top of that, The source of this rumor, even though they are somewhat trusted, now I myself have used these guys as a source in the past, and Bloomberg and the Wall Street Journal and Digitimes, Nikkei here is what's reporting this. And I have gone out on a limb and believed these publications over and over and over again, giving them the benefit of the doubt, saying that, hey, these guys have, good connections, they're trusted sources, they have a good track record. However, with Switch reporting and Nintendo reporting, the track record for all of these sites has been suspect. They've gotten continually information wrong for the past 4 years. And why do I say that? Well, there's examples of it right here. And if you've been following my channel for the past, 4 or 5 years, you'll know that these rumors and information that they post on these sites have been incorrect consistently. Now, granted, it did come out that Digital Foundry, from their sources, they've talked to developers saying that, yeah, Nintendo did plan a Switch Pro at one point, but it was canceled. However, that does not connect some of the information that these sites have got wrong about this upgraded Switch, because they were rumoring this Switch to be coming out in 2019 and 2020 and 2021 every single year. Plus, sites like Bloomberg, for example, and the Wall Street Journal were changing the makeup of what this system was throughout every single year. They were changing it. At one point, it had an IGZO display. Remember, we covered that? But the information was always incorrect. Like, it was never actually spot on from any of these publications. Now, Nikkei in particular, back in I think it was 2021 here, Nintendo, they talked about Nintendo Switch production set to hit highest level ever at 30 million. And this was for the fiscal year of 2022. They were saying this here on their website. And this was right after Nintendo had sold 28 million Switch consoles, almost 29 million, it was like 28.9 or so, 28.8. And the fiscal year ended March of 2021. So in that fiscal year, 2021, Nintendo sold almost 29 million Switch consoles during the pandemic time period. Now, Nikkei said that Nintendo was going to sell 30 million for the next fiscal year in 2022. This information was 100% incorrect. And they were actually saying that they're going to be shipping 30 million. And Nintendo ended up only selling 23 million Switch consoles in the fiscal year of 2022. So they were 7 million units off, and they didn't ship anywhere near close to that as well. These sites get things wrong all the time. This is not the only case that Nikkei got something wrong either. If you go back to 2019, we also covered this on my site as well, or my channel. But if you go all the way back to 2019, they talked about that the Nintendo Switch Lite was going to be dockable. They were actually the only site that were saying that the Switch Lite was going to be able to be docked to your TV. And they were 100% incorrect. And so we were talking about this too. It's like, oh, Nikkei is pretty trusted. Maybe I'll trust them over these other sites. But no, they got this wrong. The Switch Lite was not dockable at all. And the funny thing, though, about Bloomberg, and this caused a big ruckus online with Switch fans, basically, or people who, can't stand the thought of having a new Switch, replace the current one for some reason, which makes absolutely no sense after 6 years. Yes, it's time for a next-gen Switch. It's just as simple as that. However, the funny thing is, Mochizuki from Bloomberg, this is hilarious. This is really, really funny, and I can't believe how many people jump to conclusions about this article. And when you see what it actually says, and shout outs to Nintendo Prime for actually being a subscriber to Bloomberg, he found out what the actual article says, not the promotion of it from Mochizuki. But Mochizuki posted on Twitter from his Bloomberg page that you need to be subscribed to and pay them for. Guys, we've been there, done that with Bloomberg. Like, I don't trust this site whatsoever at this point. It's too many things they've been off about. And honestly, it's unfortunate too, because you would have liked them to get things more correct. But like A lot of YouTubers, a lot of people have been using them continually for years now, including myself, trying to assume that they have correct information, constantly being proved wrong and even called out by Nintendo at one point. Bloomberg was, for posting incorrect information about Nintendo's hardware plans. So that's the thing, But regardless of that, the reason why I'm covering this is because of the funny thing that happened here with this post. So Michizuki says, exclusive, Nintendo plans to make more Switch units in the next fiscal year starting in April versus current term. Unusually aggressive move for a game console going into its 7th year in the market. And people are like, oh my gosh, wow, this is crazy. That cancels Switch 2. That means Switch 2 doesn't exist, and they're just going to be making more Switches now. And listen, did you guys not even pay attention the past 4 years about what these people have been posting? Yeah, Nintendo most likely had plans to release a Switch Pro at some point, but that doesn't tell you details. Everything else that these people have been posting about Nintendo's release dates and numbers and plans for the future have been incorrect for the most part. To blindly believe stuff from the same exact people at this point just makes no sense. Yes, you can believe it all you want. More power to you if you want to. But to blindly believe it instantaneously after everything we've been through on these guys just doesn't make any sense. Now, combined with that, the funny thing is, it says this here, it makes it sound like, hey, that's Nintendo's plan. But what did the article actually say? Well, here's the snippet. It says Nintendo has told suppliers and assembly partners it intends to churn out more Switch units in the fiscal year starting in April, but has not yet communicated its precise target, the people said. It may revise down its plans later in the year if demand underwhelms. All right, so what does that tell you? It means that Nintendo is starting the year out shipping more Switch consoles than they did before. And why is that, you ask? Or you may be wondering, why would that be? Well, there's a big elephant in the room, right? And that elephant in the room is none other than The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. So if Nintendo's going to be releasing Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom and not delaying it, of course, in May of 2023, obviously Nintendo's going to be producing more Switch units, and quite possibly there's that rumor of an OLED Tears of the Kingdom bundle as well. So obviously, totally, of course, this is a facepalm here, for people. They come on now. Of course they're going to be releasing or shipping more Switch units to support the release of their biggest game, quite possibly at the end of this current Switch's lifespan. This is nothing. Actually, this information is a nothing burger. Anybody who was actually considering Nintendo's plans themselves could figure it out on their own that, yeah, of course, Nintendo's going to be shipping more Switch consoles to start the year. And yeah, of course, they may, revise their plans down later if demand underwhelms. Of course, this is nothing new. This is not really new information. This is not some big exclusive necessarily. I would be shocked if Nintendo didn't increase supply for the Switch during the launch of Zelda. You have to make sure supply is there in case, people are going out and buying the Switch to play the new Zelda game. This is the direct sequel to Breath of the Wild. So that's the question, because the Nintendo Switch didn't get the huge boost of sales from the new Pokemon game that came out in November. The last Switch hardware video we talked about, I was assuming that Switch would beat the PS5 basically in November due to the launch of Pokemon, but it didn't. It didn't win November due to that. So, and yes, it did win December, but who knows, what happened there as far as supply was concerned for PS5s. Either way, guys, it doesn't matter. The PS5 outsold the Nintendo Switch in the second half of 2022. That's just a fact right there. But the trend was showing that the Switch, the demand for the Switch, regardless of Pokemon or usually those huge selling games for the holiday, it didn't necessarily boost the hardware sales the same as it did in the past. So will the brand new Zelda game that they're churning out more supply for actually boost the hardware sales of the current Switch that came out in 2017, one that a lot of people already have purchased for Zelda? They've already purchased for Mario, they've already purchased for Pokemon, they've already purchased for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Xenoblade, whatever IP Nintendo has released in the past 5-6 years now. Nintendo fans and customers have already had the chance to purchase a Switch for all these games. So releasing another Zelda now, it may, have that boost of sales in the beginning of the year, but will it be something that continues? And, they're even saying here in this article, that the demand may underwhelm after that. So we'll have to wait and see. So that's the thing though with this article. It didn't obviously mean what people thought it meant. So anyone going out there and attacking people for talking about a Switch 2 for like holiday 2023 or 2024, you shouldn't be attacking anybody, first of all. But for criticizing people for talking about it makes no sense. Actually what's going to happen is after this Zelda game comes out, what will happen is that people are going to be increasing their talk about a Switch 2 at that point, especially depending on what Nintendo shows at E3. There's some questions that need to be answered by Nintendo because the Switch sales have started to decrease. Now, granted, the Nintendo 3DS was one exception to the rule where it was decreasing for many years, and then finally when Nintendo basically announced the Nintendo NX or Switch in 2016, then they released Pokemon Go. The 3DS had a brief holiday boost in sales, but then after that it died back down again. So that was really the only time where, besides the Game Boy Color release back in the 90s, where Nintendo had a console that was decreasing, and then shot back up again for a little bit and then decreased again. So yeah, the current Switch could have another increase in sales due to the release of Zelda, but after that, then what? Then it becomes time basically to release your next gen offering, because it's time also to release your next Mario, your next Mario Kart, Donkey Kong. All the IPs usually get one big main game on each console, and then Nintendo releases their next one to boost console sales of their next hardware. Otherwise, and I'm not saying that Nintendo won't release another Mario game on the Switch, it's possible. They released 2 on the Wii within 3-year time span, but it's been over 5 years since Mario Odyssey. So, for them to use another Mario game on the current Switch, quite possibly towards the end of its life cycle, you may be missing out on sales to push for the next hardware. Hey, but I'm just saying, we don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But the trend has been decline. So I posted a thing on Twitter here. I talked about how Switch hardware peaked in 2020-2021, selling 28.8 million in FY 2021. Switch sales declined since, with a projected 19 million for FY 2023, which ends March of this year. And despite being their top seller in 2022, PlayStation 5 increased stock and outsold Switch in second half. Yeah, we know that. But why is this interesting? I posted this a few days ago. Well, if you compare the drop off in sales, right? So the DS and to 3DS transition time period, the 3DS came out in 2011, right? The Nintendo DS sold 31 million in March of 2008 to March 2009. Now we're using March because that's the fiscal year, right? 31 million. But the DS sold 27 million, which is a 4 million drop off in sales from March 2009 to March 2010. This was before they even announced the 3DS, okay? Nintendo then announced the 3DS at E3 2010, and the DS went on to sell another 22 million after the DS announcement. So there was a transition period. They still were selling DSs for quite a few years. And this is one reason why the Switch 2 is in fact on the horizon. Like factually it is. It has to be. Now, I've heard people say, well, Nintendo can't, announce the next Switch with the current Switch still being a top seller, because the Switch was reported as being the number one selling console for 2022, right? Interestingly enough, the DS also was the #1 selling handheld, right? It didn't matter what the PSP was doing. It still dropped by 4 million sales, so Nintendo then announced their successor to the DS, the 3DS, because they noticed a drop off, the steady decline that it started having. What about their home console though, right? Nintendo Wii. I got all these numbers ready here for you. This is all factual information. I'll have the links in the description. Nintendo Wii. Now keep in mind the fiscal year of 2011 was from March of 2010 to March of 2011. So Nintendo sold 15 million Wii consoles in that fiscal year. And then about 3 months later at E3 2011, Nintendo announced the Wii U. Now, do you notice the drop off in sales here? There's a drop off of like 5 million per year. Obviously those are big chunks. However, the key thing though to bring out is that the Nintendo Wii in 2010, at the end of its 2011 fiscal year, so holiday 2010 to March 2011, the Wii was the #1 selling console. It beat the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 in 2010, including the holiday, all that stuff. It started losing some MPD sales to the Xbox 360 in the United States during 2010, but overall it still came out on top as a #1 seller. So why did Nintendo announce the Wii U at E3 2011? Well, because there was a steady decline in sales. It had nothing to do necessarily with them being #1 or not. It was the decline in revenue that they had per console sold because they were selling a lot less of them. The demand was less. So, likewise, with the Nintendo Switch, yes, it still was the #1 selling console in 2022, but was there a decline? Yes. And has the decline been steady since 2021? Yes. Now, yeah, they may in fact get a boost, temporary at least, in hardware sales for the next Zelda game coming out in May. They're going to push it and advertise it. Hopefully they do. And that's great. But that doesn't change the fact that a next-gen Switch should actually be right around the corner if all things like this continue. Because after Zelda, you're not going to get another Zelda game on the current Switch. That's not going to happen. It's going to be a new console. It's going to be a new Zelda, next-gen Mario, next-gen Donkey Kong, new Mario Kart, hopefully. They're going to release a new system. And even though 2024, even if this is something that's true, like I said, I question, if they really are going to be planning it like this, that far out with how the prices are in the market. Either way, guys, it doesn't matter. Honestly, like 2024, that's just next year. So either way, the next gen Switch is coming, and it's okay to be excited about it. It's okay to be talking about it. And in fact, we're only going to be talking about a next gen Switch more so as we go forward. It's only going to continue to progress. Anyone who thinks that people are going to stop talking about next gen Switch at this point after 6 years in the market, you're crazy. A next gen Switch is coming. There's a ton to be excited about for next gen Nintendo. The current Switch will continue selling, and if you're a huge fan of the current Switch, and hey, you're still going to be able to play your games on this current Switch for years to come, but that does not mean the next gen Switch is not coming. And no, this report from Bloomberg doesn't mean basically anything. Anybody could have told you that this current Switch was going to be shipping more basically in, the first part of 2023 due to Zelda. So this, in my opinion, was a ridiculous article, and that's why I'm having to cover it though, is because I need to explain this to you guys. A lot of people are missing this because they didn't actually read the article. You got to read the article to actually know what they're truly stating besides just the headline. Unfortunately, we're living in the internet time, so these things happen a lot, and you're going to have things that happen where people just assume that that's what is being meant by someone when actually the article says something else. So always read the article, look at the details, and then you'll know for sure exactly what they mean. But yeah, I've come to find out that whatever, like hardcore Switch fans, there's channels for that, right? If you're just a hardcore Nintendo Switch fan that just likes the Switch and you're not necessarily a huge fan of Nintendo's IP like I am, and you only care about that console, there's channels for you to watch that are like that. But this is not that channel. So I want Nintendo's IP to progress, which means at this point we're going to get new hardware, because that's the only way for them to progress without simply repeating the same thing over and over again. So yeah, that's all I got to say about that, guys. Thank you very much for watching. And again, if you did enjoy this, please hit the like button, and I'll talk to you very soon in the next video. Take care.